You might imagine the word invasive to be as bad as alien invasion, destroying our world and devouring humans. But in reality, a cute pet goldfish can be really close to what we are discussing now. Invasive species are organisms, either animal or plant, that are not original or native to a particular area. There are several possible ways why they are introduced to a new area in the first place. As for the goldfish, pet owners tend to throw away their fish into lakes or rivers when they are no longer needed. But some of other possible ways could be from ballast water of ocean-going ships, animal trade, live-by, also intentional and accidental releases of aquaculture species in the waterways. Surely, they are called invasive for a reason. Invasive species create a lot of problems when they are introduced to their new home. Let's take the example of goldfish. This species reproduce fast, which can easily overpopulate the area and contribute to poor water quality by destroying the sediment and uprooting plants. And that's just a goldfish. Larger and much more aggressive species would definitely cause a greater ecological harm to the new environment due to its capability of causing extinctions of native organisms through competing the limited resources at the current place. But should we be concerned about this, and how can they possibly affect us humans? We humans also can be threatened by it due to loss of natural resources in the ecosystem or from the introduction of new diseases. We can see now our rivers lack of biodiversity and usually populated by invasive species like tilapia and catfish. It is clear now that the presence of invasive species is such a pain to our ecosystem, but if we look closely, at a certain level, not all of them are bad, as they too have a specific role in our ecosystem. Previous discovery proves that some human-introduced invasive plants can have positive ecological effects by returning a damaged area to its natural state, with the species being a dominant position in the community.
While some species might help in improving ecosystem health, often invasive species are still possible to lead extinctions of other species, so it still depends on their functions in the community. Now let's take a look for some of the alien species present in Asian countries.
Invasive species are generally animals or plants from another region of the world that cause harm to the ecosystem of which they are introduced to. Many of the invasive species exhibit characteristics that make them far more successful than the native species in the new area. For example, Orochromis niloticus or Nile tilapia have the ability to reproduce quickly and can withstand polluted river waste, thus outcompeting the native fish population. There are many examples of other invasive species that have dominated the native landscape of our countries. Typically in Malaysia, invasive species were brought in by the ornamental trades. However, other modes of transportation such as ballast water, aquaculture trade and the use of bait also contributed to the release of invasive species into the environment. Now, let's see some of the examples of invasive species that is currently wreaking havoc in Malaysia. Firstly, we have pleco catfish or Hippostomus plecostomus. Dubbed as one of the worst invasive species in the world, pleco catfish is one of the most popular invasive species and ornamental fish in Malaysia. These fish originated from South America. Now, they are commonly sold in aquarium shops in Malaysia. Chances are, you can go to any aquarium shops in Malaysia and you can find this species being sold at a very low price. This species is one of the most sought after ornamental fish species in Malaysia due to its unique coloration and pattern along with its behavior of cleaning up algae in the fish tank. Due to irresponsible release of pleco catfish, this species has dominated Malaysian river, especially in Klang River, according to studies made by University Putra Malaysia. Since they are a bottom feeder, pleco catfish tend to pick up native fish eggs which are spread across the river flow. thus lowering the survival rate of other native fish species. With their ability to reproduce at a higher rate, the ecosystem dynamic of the local freshwater ecosystem in Malaysia has changed due to the invasion of plico catfish. Second, we have the common water hyacinth or Eichhornia crassipes. Beauty can be deceiving. Water hyacinth is one of the common aquatic plant species you can find in someone's backyard. However, this plant species is considered as a pest, especially in Southeast Asia. They are brought to Malaysia as an ornamental plant species from its original native habitat, which is at the Amazon basin. By developing dense mats on the surface, obstructing stream, shutting out sunlight and outcompeting native floating plants for nutrition, these aquatic plant species could obstruct fishing and water transportation. They are also known to reduce the concentration of oxygen in the water by creating a hypoxic zone that affects many other organisms. Last but not least, we have the snowflake coral or Cariwa rice. Who would have thought that corals can be invasive too? Snowflake coral is a non-photosynthetic coral that is currently invasive at Pulau Paya Marine Park in Kedah. The original distribution of this specific coral species is still unknown. Scientists estimate that they are originally from the Indo-Pacific region. Their mode of transport is still undecided. However, it is expected that this species might be transported through ballast water tank in cargo ship, or the larvae can be transported to Malaysia through the oceanic currents. This species is particularly worrying as they have a higher growth rate as compared to native coral species, and they reach sexual maturity in just a few months upon reaching approximately 2.5 cm in growth. This species can be found away from the direct sunlight, lurking behind rocks and other hard substrate which can be seen thriving. When left without any intervention, this species can outcompete native invertebrate species, thus reducing the population of native corals in the area. As coral reefs are the foundation of a healthy marine ecosystem, the loss of native corals would lead to the loss of other key species which are dependent on the native coral for food and shelter.
Generally, invasive species possibly can disturb the environment, other organism and economic sector as they can harm the specific ecosystem. Invasive species may contribute significantly to global change by reducing the biodiversity, degrading landscape and impairing the ecosystem services globally. So this can be a global concern to us as they can harm the production of resources to the consumer. So in this video, I would like to talk about the impact of invasive species in three aspects, which are environment, other organism and economical sectors. On the environmental aspect, invasive species can cause global problems in particular areas. Invasive species can reduce the biodiversity, compete with native creatures for limited resources and disrupt the environment. The interaction and the chain they are having will be disturbed by the presence of the species. It probably can make the ecosystem unstable and be exposed to danger to a particular threat. On the other hand, invasive aquatic species may harm the water quality by raising the turbidity, concentrating pollutant, and disrupting the nutrition and energy movement within the food web. This occurrence can make the environment unsafe for the organism and human to live on, as the properties provided by nature itself are contaminated with a pollutant brought by the invasive species. Thus, it will lower the resources for human use and the survivability of other organisms. Invasive species impact other organisms in a variety of ways. When an aggressive new species is introduced into an environment, it may lack of natural predators and controls. As a result, it reproduces rapidly and may swiftly take over of an area. Native fauna in a particular area may lack of defense against the invasion, or they may be unable to compete with their predator species, thus making them hard to survive, causing them to become extinct in the future. Invasive species can also harm the native organism by posing immediate hazard by preying on them, spreading disease and preventing native species from breeding or killing their juvenile. Invasive species also provide indirect danger. For example, invasive species may alter the ecosystem food chain by eliminating or replacing natural food sources. Thus, the invasive species may have a little or no nutritional benefit for the animal. Invasive species may also reduce the number of species that provide critical habitat for the native animal. Invasive species may also harm the economical sector. As an example, Eichhornia chrysip or water hyacinth has taken over most of the lake and river. This has affected the boat transfer and fishing industry. smaller scale of water, this invasive plant may cause eutrophication and loss of aquaculture output. In addition, some terrestrial invasive species are wreaking disturbance on human sources and income. For example, most common lantana. Lantana camara, which has spread over the tropical region, may significantly lower the productivity of commercially plants such as oil palm, coconut and coffee, hence jeopardizing their economic viability. Economic loss associated with ruined harvest may push the people to increase their dependence on forest resources such as hunting and logging, resulting in overexploitation and biodiversity loss. Additionally, the abandon of plantation may result in clearing tropical forests to make way for new agricultural crop replantation.
Some of you might not realize that there are actually several ways for us to deal with the invasive problem that currently occurring in our environment right now. The action that could be taken is by physically removing the following species and rehabilitating the environment.
We should eliminate the unwanted pet or animal in the dustbin rather than releasing the live animal and plants in lake, river or alongside the beach, which could lead the invasive species to find their established place and resulting them to spread more quickly to other areas. Alternatively, the animal can also be disposed on land by using burn method, or they can also be buried. Using a sharp tool, experienced divers may use any of the tools such as wooden stick, metal spear, boat hook or some other easily manipulated rod to remove or shoot the animal off the reef. In order to remove this species, it needs a precaution due to the sharp poisonous spine of the animal that could lead to injuries during the removal process. Prevention. Water hyacinth, for example, is rapidly reproducing and may soon cover the entire surface of the water if no action is taken. Thus, to avoid rapid and abrupt development of this species, we need to make sure to keep track of the nutrient levels in the pond or lake. Other than that, we can also use aquatics weed control boom where it helps to protect our lake, pond or shoreline from the invasive species by controlling the surface wildflower and weeds. Also light debris from migrating into clean ways. And the second action is rehabilitate the environment by law and education. Report to the relevant parties if invasive species are found in the area. If there is a presence of new attack of species categorized as invasive, you may submit a report to any relevant organization from government agencies, programs, or ministries that are dealing with invasive alien species. There are few organizations that can be reached regarding this issue, such as the Ministry of Agriculture, Plant Variety Office, Department of Wildlife and National Park, the Department of Fisheries, the Forestry Department of Peninsular Malaysia, and the Department of Veterinary Service. Then, volunteering in removing the invasive species, find nearby invasive species volunteer opportunities, or on the social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. In addition, collaboration with environmental NGO agencies or local people in addressing these invasive species can also be highlighted. Check out your closest state or national park website to see if they host any activities regarding to invasive species eliminating. And lastly, it advertises about the impact of invasive species, explain the invasive impact of the species to the local population, school and universities, or even is not taken care of will pose a danger to environment and life. Also, with the knowledge imparted can save the native plants and animals that are around us.
At this moment, we now understand that invasive species can harm both the natural resources in an ecosystem as well as threaten human health and the use of these resources. Invasive species are capable of causing extinctions of native plants and animals, reducing biodiversity, competing with native organisms for limited resources, and altering habitats. I believe now you should be able to identify some of the invasive species present in your area. Until next time, stay safe and goodbye.